4 minutes, that's all it took. You were broke renting, staring at charts for 12 hours a day. One trade. Bought your house outright. You'll learn the psychological framework behind that conviction. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. But the trade wasn't the hard part. Trusting your mind after painful losses was. You've made the same mistake twice. It's not your fault, it's the method. Disclaimer, results aren't guaranteed. This is educational only. Ready to see how? You stared at the screen, heart hammering against your ribs. After years of storms, of red weeks and sleepless nights, this setup was different. It was a lightning strike forming in slow motion. You felt the familiar burn of adrenaline, but this time it wasn't panic. Your hand didn't tremble over the mouse because of fear. It trembled because you knew. The clock ticked down. Enter now or don't. 4 minutes. Those 4 minutes weren't about courage. They were the tip of an iceberg. What everyone sees is the lightning-fast execution, the seemingly instant profit. What they don't see is the mountain of ice below the surface. Thousands of hours of brutal, boring, invisible preparation. You see a trade. I see years of staring at charts until patterns burned into my brain. I see the journals, the failed strategies, the meditation. The 4 minutes was just the final exhale. The inhale took 4 years. I'll show you the 3 mental shifts that made this possible, but the second one almost made me quit trading forever. In this moment, the dollar amount on the line was terrifying. I'm not talking about a casual position size. This was a make this or move back into a smaller apartment kind of number. The fear wasn't a flicker. It was a physical weight on my chest, a voice screaming that one wrong click could erase everything. The real trade wasn't on the screen. It was happening in my mind. Stop thinking this was luck. Your brain is wired to lie to you, to craft a story of overnight success. It wants the gamble, the fantasy of the one big trade that fixes everything. That's the amateur's dream. The professional's reality is dreadfully boring. It's a method, a system, a set of rules. That 4-minute trade wasn't a thrilling leap into the unknown. It was the most calculated, boring decision I've ever made. Luck is preparation meeting opportunity, and I had done the preparation. The psychology behind those 4 minutes contradicts everything beginner traders believe. You think the secret is finding the perfect setup, the holy grail indicator. It's not. The journey is one of subtraction, not addition. It's about mastering the space between the setup and the action, a state of deep, still preparation, turning patience into a weapon, honing precision until execution feels automatic. But to understand the 4 minutes, you need to understand the 4 years. Let me describe a scene you know too well. The trade closes red. You stare at the screen, frozen. Your account balance flashes 0 again. The margin call email unread in your inbox. You've blown through another deposit. Credit card statements stacked in a drawer, unopened. The weight of shame presses on your chest as you lie to your partner about where the money went. I lost it all. Twice. The sleepless nights, the hidden screen activity, the secret hope that this time would be different. You weren't reckless. You were trained by a system that sets you up to fail. It's not your fault. The method was flawed from the start, but inside every catastrophic loss was a hidden lesson. Each failure was forging something invisible. Every loss was secretly building the skill that eventually paid for my house. This was productive failure, the kind that carves out your future self. Revenge trading was my constant companion. One loss and I doubled down, chasing the red until my account pleaded for mercy. Oversizing became the norm. Every position felt like a hero or zero bet, ignoring risk management as if it were optional. Chasing moves I missed, entering late, praying for courage that had already left the chart. Each mistake was a hammer strike. Like a samurai forging a blade, heat, fold, hammer, quench, repeatedly. No single strike creates the cutting edge. The fire tempers the metal, the water shocks it into strength. In the same way, the pain of each blown account was the fire. The sleepless nights were the cooling water. That fire hardened your discipline, forging your patience. Pain reshaped your psychology from fragile to unbreakable. But the transformation didn't come without a cost. Relationships frayed until they snapped. You'd nod along in conversations, but your mind was still on the charts, replaying every tick. Sleep became a stranger. Your pillow knew your worries better than your partner ever could. You started to question everything. Who had you become? Was this whole pursuit a lie? There was one breaking point that changed my entire relationship with money. I'll get to that. The shame was so deep that you'd check your phone alone, hiding in the bathroom, afraid of being seen. Identity loss is a slow erosion. Each loss chipped away at your confidence. You no longer recognized the person staring back in the mirror. Trading had taken more than money. It had taken your sense of self. The cost was losing yourself before you could ever win. So here's the question that haunts every trader staring at a blown account. What separates the ones who quit from the ones who break through? The answer isn't a better indicator or a secret strategy. It's emotional detachment from individual trades. You had to learn to treat each trade as just one event in a long series. The outcome stopped defining you. Winning or losing became data, not destiny. This shift was the foundation. It allowed you to see trading for what it really is, a probability game over time. Detachment didn't mean you stopped caring. It meant you stopped caring about the wrong things. Stillness creates clarity, memory, discipline, consistency. This detachment was the mental framework that made the 4-minute trade possible. It separated amateurs from the true professionals. You finally controlled your emotions. They no longer controlled you. But this was just the beginning of the transformation. The 4-minute trade wasn't luck. It was the result of a completely rewired mind. In the next part, I'll reveal the exact mental frameworks that locked in this discipline. How to make stillness your default state, even in chaos. The morning routine that reset your fear response before the market opened. The journaling method that exposed your patterns before they repeated. These weren't just ideas. They were tools forged in the fire of failure. You'll see how to install them into your own trading life. Stillness becomes clarity. Clarity becomes memory. Memory becomes discipline. Discipline becomes consistency. Consistency becomes the 4 minutes that change everything. So that the years of loss become the foundation for the breakthrough you've been chasing. But you walked through fire. Now you're ready for the blueprint. The best trade of my life felt boring. You'd expect euphoria, but no, just a quiet click and a number on the screen. That's the paradox. When you truly detach from the outcome, the highs and lows flatten. You stop riding the emotional roller coaster, and in that stillness you see clearly. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. You felt it, the rush after a win, the despair after a loss. But what if you could trade without that? Master this one skill and your win rate becomes almost irrelevant. Think like a poker player. You don't celebrate one hand. You play the odds over thousands. Process over outcome. It's not about this trade. It's about the next 1,000. Here's why caring about money makes you lose money. When you fixate on the profit, your brain floods with cortisol. Fear hijacks your prefrontal cortex, the part that plans and reasons. Greed does the same, convincing you to hold too long. You've been there, watching a position turn red, your pulse racing, making irrational exits. Or seeing profits and refusing to take them, sure it'll run more. Neuroscience isn't your friend here. The amygdala screams while your logic shuts down. You're not trading, you're reacting. To break free, you must separate self from outcome. Detachment isn't coldness, it's freedom. You stop being the investor and become the casino. The casino doesn't cheer or cry over a single spin. It knows the math. You must learn to trade like this, calm, calculated, detached from each result. This connects to a technique I learned from a monk, stay with me. He taught me to treat every action as a prayer, detached from result. Applied to trading, it changes everything. Start by predefining your risk before you enter. You know exactly what you'll lose if it goes wrong. Treat capital as ammunition, not your rent money. Each trade is a business expense, like a factory buying materials. Losses aren't failures, they're operating costs. When you view them this way, the sting evaporates. You make decisions based on the system, not the fear. The monk's lesson: act with full commitment but release attachment to the outcome. You do your part, the market does its. This isn't about not caring, it's about caring correctly. This shift transforms trading from gambling to a profession. But detachment alone almost destroyed me, because there's a dark side no one warns you about. I became so detached that I stopped caring entirely. Trades were just numbers. I lost conviction. You can drift into apathy, making careless entries because it's just a business cost. That's dangerous. Without conviction, your system crumbles. You need to care enough to execute flawlessly, yet not so much that emotions cloud your judgment. It's a razor's edge. The dark side of detachment is numbness. You stop reviewing your trades. You ignore patterns. Losses pile up not from bad luck but from neglect. There's a balance. You must detach from the outcome but attach fiercely to your process. This tension is where mastery lives. Master it and you'll find a new edge. I learned this the hard way. After months of robotic trading, my performance tanked. I had stripped the humanity out and with it, the vigilance. You need both, the stillness of a monk and the hunger of a warrior. The market demands you hold two truths at once. This trade doesn't matter and this trade is everything. It's a paradox that requires mental shift too, a framework I'll share next. For now, practice outcome detachment but watch for the numbness. Notice when you're too cold. The goal is to trade with a quiet mind and a sharp eye. Remember, process over profit, stillness over stimulation. That's the path to irrelevant win rates and sustainable edge. Stay with me for the next shift, where we build unshakable conviction. You're learning to detach, but here's the truth no one admits. Detachment without conviction is just hesitation wearing a mask. You'll freeze when the moment demands action, watching perfect setup slip away while doubt drains your edge. It's not your fault. The method was incomplete. Conviction isn't hope. Hope is what gamblers cling to before their account bleeds. Conviction is what let me pull the trigger in 4 minutes when others froze, paralyzed by the noise. That split-second decision wasn't luck. It was a certainty forged long before the chart appeared. Think of a military sniper who waits weeks in stillness for one perfect shot. He doesn't fire because he's hopeful or anxious. He fires because thousands of practice rounds, wind speed calculations, and muscle memory drills make the outcome indisputable. Your trading conviction is built identically through backtesting scars, relentless repetition, and pattern recognition seared into your subconscious. When that setup materializes, your brain doesn't ask questions. It recognizes an old friend. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. Without this evidence-based confidence, your detachment is just a polite way of freezing with your finger off the trigger. There's a specific mental ritual I do before every high-conviction trade. It's not a superstitious tick. It's a trigger switch that activates flow. In flow, the chart slows down, the noise dissolves, and execution becomes frictionless. My breathing drops, my shoulders release, and I'm not a person staring at a screen. I'm a process completing itself. I'm no longer hoping the trade works. I'm executing a statistical probability that I've seen prove itself hundreds of times. This psychological state is where peak performance lives. It's the space between robotic detachment and reckless euphoria, and it's accessible only when you've done the tedious, unseen homework. But listen closely. Conviction can mutate into arrogance, and arrogance blows accounts. It's a poison that whispers you're invincible, encouraging you to ignore your own risk rules because you're certain this time is different. The market humbles certainty quickly. The sniper never forgets his mortality. One missed calculation ends everything. You must hold conviction and humility in the same hand, respecting that your edge is probability, not prophecy. When you feel that godlike certainty swelling in your chest, treat it as a threat. Real confidence is quiet. It doesn't need to scream. Type the word trading in the comments right now to lock in your commitment to mastering your mindset. This is your public accountability, a contract with yourself to stop trading on instinct and start operating with precision. And if you're serious about building this unshakable conviction instantly, don't leave this page without grabbing the 2 free gifts below. The first is my 15-step pre-trade checklist, the exact ritual that triggers my flow state so you never miss another firing signal. The second is a risk management calculator that mathematically prevents you from blowing up, protecting your capital like my 4-minute trade protected mine. These tools will skyrocket your conviction while killing hesitation. Next, we move into the terrifying shift 3, the one most traders run from, the final piece that separates permanent profitability from chronic self-sabotage. Don't run. I made more money doing nothing than trade. You've probably spent weeks glued to charts, entering every twitch and candle, only to watch your account bleed sideways. The frantic clicking, the impulsive entries, none of it works. The 4-minute trade that changed my year only happened because I did absolutely nothing for 11 months before it. You need to adopt the sniper mentality. The sniper doesn't fire at every shadow. He waits flat on his belly for days, finger resting quietly, until the single high-probability target finally walks into the crosshairs. That is patience. That is the game changing. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. When you trade every setup, you aren't a sniper. You're a gambler spraying bullets into a dark forest, praying you hit something vital. The market doesn't reward prayer. It rewards precision. Think of the lion hiding in the tall, dry grass. She isn't chasing every gazelle that prances by. She knows that chaotic sprinting burns precious energy and leaves her starving. Instead, she becomes perfectly motionless, a statue of controlled muscle, waiting for the isolated, slow, or injured prey to drift close enough. The market requires that same dormant intensity. Boredom destroys accounts far faster than volatility ever could. When you feel that restless itch to force a trade, you overtrade. Overtrading is just impatience wearing a business suit. You take a painful loss. 2 weeks later, you make the exact same mistake. It's not your character, it's the lack of a filter. When you elevate patience to a superpower, being flat isn't passive, it's an aggressive, strategic position. Here's the open loop. I'll reveal the exact confluence of criteria that screamed at me, this is the trade. It wasn't a vague feeling or a hot tip. It was a rigid checklist that eliminated every other possibility. By sitting in cash, you aren't missing out. You are dodging the opportunity cost of being tied up in a mediocre runner while the perfect anomaly forms on your screen. Discipline is the conscious denial of a small immediate reward for a massive eventual one. Most cannot sit in cash because they can't process the silence. But the silence is where the geometry of the chart reveals itself. You stop reacting and you start anticipating. The problem was never your strategy. The problem was your inability to filter out the noise between the signals. But how do you know when the perfect moment has finally arrived? There I was, 11 months deep into that silent waiting, and the pattern finally printed. It looked deceptively simple, almost too quiet. The trap here is thinking patience just means holding out longer for any old setup. No, the sniper's shot is specific. It requires a precise alignment of volume, structure, and time. Without that alignment, you remain invisible in the grass, watching the wildebeest pass. That single execution lasted just 4 minutes, a rapid, violent burst of efficiency after a year of stillness. The stillness gave birth to the clarity, and the clarity allowed for the violent, unshakable execution. The old you would have been exhausted and out of capital by then. The new you was ready. The setup is coming next. Anticipation isn't anxiety, it's the fuse. Minute 1, I saw it. You know that moment. The chart aligns and your gut tightens, but your brain screams caution. Minute 2, I checked my rules. Not my feelings, not my P&L, not the voice saying you've been wrong before, just the checklist. Was the trend intact? Yes. Did price retest a key level? Yes. Was there a clear rejection signal? Yes. 3 yesies out of 3. In most trading rooms, this is where the analysis ends and the gambling begins. But for me, this was minute 3, the pause. The moment most traders skip because the signal feels urgent. The pause is where the amateur and the professional diverge. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. By the end of this section, you'll understand the exact decision tree I used because it's repeatable. It's not magic. It's a system that processes the signal, not the emotion. The setup was a perfect confluence. A daily support level holding for the 3rd time, a bullish engulfing candle on the 15-minute chart, and volume confirming the rejection. The trigger was a 1-minute close above the high of that engulfing candle. Textbook, perfect, and that terrified me. But I almost didn't take it. Your heart hammers. Your finger hovers. The memory of your last loss, which felt identical to this, replays in vivid detail. You've been conditioned by pain to see every setup as a trap. This is the hidden battlefield before every single trade. My internal dialogue was a war. The voice of fear said, "The market's been choppy, don't be a hero." The voice of ego said, "If you miss this winner, you're an idiot." Both voices are liars. Both voices get you blown up. The only sound I've trained myself to listen for is the quiet click of a rule being met. And the rule had been met. So the discipline wasn't in the courage to pull the trigger. The discipline was in the surrender. Surrender to the process. Inhale, exhale, click. The physical act of entry was profoundly boring. A single market order placed and filled. No hesitation, no adrenaline. Because the decision had already been made in minute 3. The trade was alive. There's one rule that saved me from disaster even on my best trade. Most traders obsess over entries, but the entry just opens the door. You can walk into the right room and still fall through the floor if it isn't built properly. The rule was this. My stop loss wasn't just below the signal candle's low. It was below the entire zone of liquidity I had identified. This tiny shift in placement is the difference between a strategic retreat and getting slaughtered by a stop hunt. I knew the market would sniff out a tight cluster of stops, so I positioned mine where a break of it would genuinely invalidate the entire thesis, not just wick me out for fun. Position sizing was automatic, another function of the system. A predefined fraction of the account dialed to a level of heat I could literally sleep through. There is no bravery in a 4-minute trade. There is only preparation. My size was set, my stop was set, and then I did the most difficult thing of all, I waited. The exit was the hardest part, and it taught me something about greed. Price ripped higher instantly. Within 2 minutes the trade was in significant profit. My pulse, which was flat during the entry, now spiked. This is the trap. You survive the fear of the entry only to be mauled by the euphoria of the win. Every cell in my body screamed to take profit. Book it. You're a genius. Secure the bag. But my rules didn't say profit target. They said trailing structure. I watched a new 1-minute swing low form. That became my line in the sand. The market retraced. It came from my unrealized gains, and the pain of giving back profit was visceral, almost physical. I felt the greed transforming into fear in real time. You're going to let this winner turn into a loser. You'll hate yourself. The script plays in your head exactly like this. But I let the candle close. Price hadn't broken my new low. The battle was internal, but the signal was external. And I sat hands off, trusting the very structure I had created for this exact psychological ambush. That trust, held for 60 more seconds, was the real profit. You've been there. You stare at a blood-red screen and think, if only that trade had turned just a little. But here's the cold truth you need to hear. This trade could have failed and I would have been fine, not lucky. Fine. That's not arrogance. It's architecture. You are about to learn the framework that let me risk big without gambling. Not by hoping harder. By designing a payout where my downside was a small, forgettable scratch and my upside was a monumental move. This is asymmetric risk-reward. It doesn't predict the future. It simply makes guessing obsolete. Think of it like an insurance policy, but reversed. An insurance company collects tiny premiums from millions, knowing some houses will burn. They protect their downside by spreading risk, so the rare disaster becomes a trivial payout. You do the exact same thing. Your stop loss is the tiny known premium. The giant trend is the house burning. The math must be robotic. You risk a defined tiny fraction of your account. Say you risk 1%. On a $10,000 account, that is a $100 premium. A loss means you file a small claim and move on. A win means the market pays you a settlement 10 times that size. You protect the downside not with hope, but with precise, pre-calculated sizing that makes ruin mathematically uncomfortable to reach. Most people get this backwards, and it's why they blow up. They stare at a chart and see a fortune. They size up because they are certain, and that crushing certainty forces their hand to risk 5, 10, 20% on a single idea. When that position turns against them, their body knows. Cortisol floods the brain. Their prefrontal cortex, the part that makes rational decisions, shuts down. They freeze, move their stop, or double down. Proper risk isn't about cowardice. It's about staying physiologically calm so your logic remains online. You risk so little that a loss is boring. Boredom is the soil where consistent execution grows. When your survival isn't threatened, you can finally see clearly. So when the profit came, the number that truly mattered to me wasn't the payout staring back from the screen. It was the tiny, controlled line I had drawn in the sand before I ever clicked a button. The risk. That number defined my breathing. It defined my sleep. It meant my mindset wasn't a frantic mess chasing a price, but a patient observer waiting for confirmation. Money management and mindset are not separate disciplines. They are the same discipline. Position size is the physical expression of your emotional stability. Change the size, and you change your brain chemistry. That is the hidden secret. And the mindset you need to build starts with a single, unshakable decision. Everything I did, you can learn. You've watched me overcome the same cycle of frustration that's been eating away at your confidence. It's not talent, not luck. It's a trained response. The pain you feel after a loss isn't a flaw. It's the raw material for change. The method that freed me didn't require genius, just willingness. You think you're stuck, but the door is already unlocked. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates memory. Memory creates discipline. Follow these steps and you'll rewire your trading brain. Start with a journal, but not one that just records entries. You document the feeling before, during, and after the trade. Next, define your edge in one sentence. No vagueness. If you can't articulate it, you don't have it. Then backtest that edge relentlessly, not for profit numbers, but for conviction. When you see 1,000 repetitions, your brain stops questioning the setup. Conviction kills hesitation. Hesitation is what bleeds accounts. You're building a mental fortress brick by brick, and every brick is a proven data point. No shortcuts, just stacking certainty. Think of this process like building a house. Your psychology is the foundation. If it's cracked with revenge, trading, and self-doubt, every wall will collapse. The walls are your strategy, the concrete rules that keep you safe from the storm of chaos outside. And the roof is risk management, the final boundary that shields you when markets turn vicious. You don't admire a house for the paint, you trust it for the structure. Daily mental practices become your maintenance. Each morning, 5 minutes of silence before you touch a chart. Each evening, a review not of money, but of adherence to plan. But there's one habit that accelerates everything. You learn to review your losses without a trace of emotion, as if you're studying someone else's mistake. The pain is just chemical. Strip it away and you find pure data. Instead of tracking P&L, you track process metrics. Did you follow the plan? Did you sit on your hands during noise? Did you size correctly? The numbers lie until you measure the right things. When you obsess over the inputs, the outputs take care of themselves. This one shift turns a losing morning into a lesson that profits you for years. So where do you actually start tomorrow morning? First, open a blank document and write your 3 most recent losses in detail, labeling the emotion you felt and the broken rule. Second, define one clear if-then statement for your edge. Write it on a sticky note. Third, promise yourself you will not check your P&L for 1 full week. You'll only journal process checks. This is not a get-rich formula. It takes months, results vary, and this is purely educational. But if you begin, you stop being a victim of your impulses. Slowly, silently, you become the trader who no longer needs to fight himself. You're walking through the house now, keys in hand. 4 minutes, 4 years, one mindset. Your 4-minute trade is coming, but only if you prepare for it. 3 shifts made it possible. Detachment from outcome, absolute conviction in the setup, patience to wait until the market begged you to act. Speed doesn't come from rushing. It comes from slow, deliberate preparation. You've taken painful losses before, chasing fast moves, and blamed yourself. It wasn't your fault. The method taught you to react. But here, you learned that stillness builds the foundation for speed. Fast results are the shadow of invisible work. The overnight success that took a decade. You see the 4-minute trade, the house, and it looks like magic. But underneath are 4 years of empty charts, days of doing nothing, watching price action repeat until it's burned into your nervous system. That's the invisible work. The hours spent not trading, the temptation resisted, the ego starved. Embrace it. Stillness creates clarity. Clarity creates conviction. Conviction creates patience. The years of preparation gave you the right to act in 4 minutes. No one sees the roots, only the tree. Your edge wasn't in that trade. It was forged in the quiet. Remember when you first saw that house and it felt like someone else's life? That was before you detached. The house was never the reward. The real prize is the mind that can sit still while others panic, that can watch a move and not flinch, that can execute without second-guessing. That's what 4 years built. The trade lasted 4 minutes, the transformation 4 years. You walked through doubt, through noise, through the ache of staying flat. And now the keys are in your hand, but the true wealth is the discipline that put them there. The house is just wood and glass. You're the asset. The next chapter of your trading story starts with one decision. Not to chase a setup, not to revenge trade, but to commit to the process. To prepare like the elite. To honor the invisible work as the real performance. Your 4-minute mindset is waiting in the stillness, and it's yours the moment you decide to train it. That decision has nothing to do with luck and everything to do with surrender, letting go of the need to act until the market gives you no choice. So what will it be? The old rush or the new patience? The answer shapes everything. Here's how you lock in that commitment. Like this video, subscribe and type "trading" in the comments. It's a small act of public accountability that tells your brain this is real. I read every single word. It's our pact. And to accelerate your preparation, I've put 2 free gifts in the description. The 15-step checklist to use before every trade. is the exact filter I ran before my 4-minute trade. It forces detachment and clarity. The risk management calculator ensures you never risk too much again, eliminating the fear that kills conviction. These tools made my transformation possible. They'll skyrocket your results. The house isn't the dream. The mind that built it is. Go build yours. 4 minutes, 4 years, one mindset. Yours starting now.